I am, yeah, but it's not exactly accurate to say I'm studying seriously because I was always serious about it.
Well,
I'm just directing it in a more disciplined.
Picture this. Paul Simon, deep in thought, gazing over Manhattan's skyline from his apartment, a notebook in his hand, melodies echoing in his mind, and a mental list not of influences but of offenses. Because for all his lyrical grace and poetic restraint, Paul Simon never tolerated pretense, gimmick, or arrogance. These are the 6 artists he quietly, but unmistakably, came to resent. Not out of rivalry, but out of deep ideological conflict, artistic disillusionment, and personal wounds that never quite healed. Let's start with the name that cut the deepest, not a rival, but a brother once in harmony.
Art Garfunkel. They weren't just bandmates, they were soulmates in song. Their voices rose like cathedrals, blending into something timeless. But behind the beauty, shadows lingered. Years of quiet resentments, ego battles, and creative tension chipped away at the foundation.
Each reunion became a reminder, not of music, but of what was lost: trust, innocence, and the purity that once defined them.
Simon once told a journalist, "I loved Art like a brother. And like all brothers, I hated him too."
But deeper still was grief. Grief for a friendship music had built, but life couldn't preserve. If Garfunkel was a wound carved in harmony, then Sting was a cut made with precision.
On the surface, they were peers, poets of their generation. But to Simon, Sting's work felt like theater masquerading as death.
Sting sings like he's solving a riddle for applause, he once remarked.
A benefit gala in 2002 sealed their silent fallout. Sting joked on stage, 2 poets, 1 mic. Paul smiled thinly. By morning, he declined all future offers to collaborate. For Simon, music was born from scars. For Sting, it seemed like polished performance. That difference created a chasm too wide to cross.
Then there was Bob Dylan, the titan he once revered.
In the 60s, Simon studied Dylan's lyrics like scripture. But when they finally met, the admiration turned to ashes.
Dylan, aloof and cold, once muttered, "Too clever," referring to Simon's work.
It wasn't just criticism, it was dismissal. And Simon never forgot. He began seeing Dylan not as a guiding light but as a shadow performer hiding behind a harmonica.
They exchanged icy barbs in interviews, Simon mocking Dylan's nasal tone, Dylan calling Simon's lyrics neat, but not in a good way. It was never a feud, it was a cold war fought in footnotes and passive lines. The clash with Ed Sheeran wasn't personal, until it was.
At first, Simon appreciated the hustle. He'd walked the same hard road of dim clubs and small crowds. But over time, Ed's rise felt like replication without reflection. He once said Ed's early songs sounded like Simon and Garfunkel without the pain.
When Sheeran name-dropped Paul as an influence, it didn't feel like tribute, it felt like theft.
Simon told his team, "I'm not his compass." To him, Ed's popularity marked a shift in music, storytelling stripped of tension, success without scars. And that wounded him more than outright insult ever could.
Now enter Lou Reed, the Velvet Underground icon who stood for everything Simon rejected.
Reed's raw, jagged style was anti-music to Paul. Where Simon was surgical, Lou was savage. Their brief time on the same label was marked by cold meetings. Lou would show up late, arms crossed, sunglasses on, indoors. Simon called him aggressively hollow. Reed mocked Paul's music as therapy, and not the good kind. Their final meeting ended mid-sentence, Reed simply walked away. It wasn't a fight.
It was worse. It was silence. And Simon never forgave that silence.
The most theatrical clash came with Madonna, the icon of image, spectacle, and controlled rebellion.
Simon admired boldness, but not when it was for sale. He once accused her of selling rebellion like soda pop.
At the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, she approached him like royalty, camera ready, all smiles. Paul gave her a handshake, nothing more. Her attention shifted to the photographers within seconds. To him, she wasn't a rebel, she was a brand. And that moment confirmed something chilling.
In a world that worships artifice, Paul's brand of authenticity had become an artifact. When asked what they talked about, he replied simply, nothing. And that was the most honest part of it. And so, Paul Simon, a man of melodies, was just as defined by silence. Not just musical silence, but the kind that lingers between people. The pauses after an insult, the hush after betrayal.
The long drives home from strained rehearsals. The birthday calls that never came. His genius was in the spaces he left blank. The notes he didn't play. The lines he didn't write. Because sometimes, silence sings the truest song. Not a scream in the dark, but a breath held back. A harmony denied. A bridge never rebuilt. He didn't need to write diss tracks or rants. He remembered in tighter melodies, in lines left out, in verses where a breath should have been. Paul Simon hummed his anger. Quietly. Brilliantly. Precisely. And sometimes, that hum cut deeper than any shout. Thanks for watching this deep dive into Paul Simon's quiet feuds and musical silence. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments who you'd like us to explore next. This is Rockspire, where music history meets raw honesty. Stay tuned for more. God bless.